Welcome everybody to the MSP Growth Kit webinar. I'm here with Nate, Austin, and Steve Riot. How long have we been doing this now? How many of these we have?
It's been almost a year, so I think we missed 1 month, I think, so far.
Yeah. Just topics, sales, marketing, MSP related, good stuff. All designed around a kit that collectively built primarily from these guys last year, called the MSP Growth Kit, which is available out for free. All kinds of tools and utilities and models and templates and some white papers and different things to help you grow sales and marketing as you try to grow your MSP. And then we just pick topics and start talking about them. And this month, we're on a little bit of part 2. We talked some account management last month, but now we're talking I'm calling this episode the Survivor episode, getting somebody off the island, which is how do you, when do you recognize, what does it look like? How do you get somebody off the island? So let's start there.
Brad, let me start this out just a little bit because I feel like I'm living that this week.
You are
like last week, this week, like I bet I have chewed 5 sales reps rears. I'm being polite. And if I thought they wouldn't listen to this, I'd probably give their exact examples. But everything from showing up, like seriously, just like being able to show up, to what the hell, you weren't prepared, you weren't ready, you did.
Yeah.
And so today, I think the whole topic today is with sales. And I'm speaking of myself. So let's be very clear. I think radical candor plays here. And that's what today is about.
Yeah.
Is getting in people's face and saying, look, that's unacceptable. And let me be very clear. Like, if I was going to do this, Brad, I'm going to do it on you. So you know better than this. But Brad, your behavior not showing up yesterday is unacceptable. I need you to be hungry. I need you to be smart, and I need to be LFG. So when we're having this conversation, do you understand what I'm saying, Brad?
Steve, I answer that specifically that way because do you think you can manage that into people, or does this come from you've made a new hire and they haven't established themselves with those traits?
So first of all, I think you're absolutely right. Like, what I'm talking about here is specifically like some newer folks that we're setting my expectations clearly and concisely. And let's be clear, like they were kind of led down the path of what expectation was. They made bad decisions. And so now we're having very concise conversations of, okay, here's where you failed. Because like I didn't give you how you didn't show up. I would have given you the time, the date, the location, here's the conversation we had, and then I would follow what I just said with you, Brad. I need you to repeat that back to me.
Yeah. Let me ask, because my question was going to be this.
Okay.
In a perfect world, and if you were writing a book, it would be establish your KPIs. And if they're not hitting their KPIs, then you can manage them out. My experience has been, and I don't want to lead the witness, but I sort of already am. How many times is it a clear KPI violation? And how many times is it just, it's just not working? And then you try to find the KPIs to sort of manage to get them out. Like, what does that look like for you guys?
Well, I think, look, what my specific examples I'm giving is new folks that the KPIs aren't like, there's some KPIs, right? Like doing certain activities in this case where they're super new, right? Like hitting quota is probably not part of that KPI at this point in their journey.
Right.
So like what I'm talking about is like early coaching to set your expectations clearly and concisely of what success and failures look like. But then secondly, and this is where I think we struggle, I think leaders struggle in general, is like holding people directly accountable. And here's like, this is absolutely the Kim Scott method of like, I care enough to tell you that that's bad. I had an example. This was like many years ago, so I can speak to this. Like we had a rep that chewed gum loudly and had a problem eating in a way that wasn't offensive. No awareness. It wasn't a KPI, right? It wasn't a KPI, but he had no awareness. He didn't know.
Right.
And so like it took okay, Brad.
Yeah.
If you can't find a way to chew your gum in a quiet manner, no gum in your mouth for sure around customers. And quite
Yeah.
frankly, it really annoys me and you probably need to not have gum.
Yeah.
But also when you're eating, I want to talk about this behavior. And here's why I'm telling you, Brad, is because I care. Customers notice this stuff and it can put a customer off from buying from you.
Yeah.
If I didn't care about your success here, I wouldn't tell you this.
Right. It's funny. This is just a bit of an aside, but and Nate, I think you might appreciate this. I'm thinking of our mates in Australia and how when you try to reprimand or put employees on different sort of ways to improve behavior that you don't like they call it bullying. And in today's day and age, how do you carefully craft the right things, right? To coach and to set expectations that just need to be better.
Well, now that you said that, I have a different answer than what I was going to say or what I was going to touch on relative to what Steve said. But I think there was a business coach of ours we worked with for several years that really taught us, one, how to just as a leadership team run leadership team meetings better. They helped us define our go-to-market strategy. They really helped us just be better leaders and executors in our roles. And one of those things that business coach brought to us, which we love and we use, is a concept of, in fact, part of the offer letter is an introductory letter that says, we are inviting you into this role. And by you accepting this role, you are attesting and confirming that you will do everything in your capability to do the things that this role requires to be successful in this role. And we define that stuff very clearly. Yeah. And so conceptually, that's the first place we start. And even for me and the team of people that work with me, they know the last interview that they get before they'd come on and join our team. That's YouTube. We can swear. I call it scare the shit out of them conversation.
Yeah.
Because I am not, I wouldn't say ruthless, but I am just overly candidly transparent about expectations, timelines, things that the role is going to entail. Because the last thing I want, because it's really setting me up for success as a manager. Yeah. Because I know to 100% certainty that I articulated everything that we're going to expect of them to do, and they said yes. And I'll even tell them, like, look, if this is not for you, then you should say no, right? You don't even have to answer me right now. Yeah. Don't accept the job. Because I don't, so it really is, that's the thing that I don't want to have as a team member joining 90 days, 120 days in, I mean, like, I didn't realize this is what the job was, right? Yeah. Now, you still run that risk when you have more junior team members who really haven't had, when you're hiring like an entry-level position, they don't really know what the role entails, even if you are completely transparent and candid about it. But I think that's the start for us, because I think that sets our managers up for success, because then I look at myself and know that doesn't mean that I did the best job of training them. And I could, I can always take that as far as like, did I train them well enough? Did I really educate them on this? But they at the very least said they will do the things that they can control and opt in to doing everything they can for this role. And that's, I think, a critical thing, because then it affords us the opportunity to have the conversation that Steve just said. It's like, hey, you accepted this job. I told you this is what's going to be expected. Your behavior was part of the things that we need, and you're not doing that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and if feel free to choose to opt out if Steve, like to your point, if they're too fresh and it would associate too closely with a situation that like you just don't want to talk about, feel free to say no. But the last person or the last one that you think of that comes to mind that like, yep, I had to manage somebody out. Why? What was it? What was it that was like, yep, this is the thing. This is why they're out. Can you put a name to it?
Yeah, actually, and so, like, first of all, let me make this statement: this person is still here, meaning that we went through this process and they were being, we're using the term managed out, but they were being held to expectations, right? And this particular person, they're still on my team, and they worked exceptionally hard. Like, not a question, were they willing to put the time, the effort, the passion? It was all there. The problem was it wasn't equal results, and I was getting calls from customers saying they weren't getting timely responses, they weren't getting responses, all that stuff. So understand that when I came to the table, like, I knew that the care and the passion were there. And by the way, I love this guy. Like,
Yeah.
I was at his wedding. Like, we're very tight. So a lot of connection there. So it wasn't a question of like, does he want it, right? But the question became, could he do it, right? Like that was the ultimate, like, that we had to have. And so it was one of these things that, like, the current behaviors that we were doing were not equaling the results we need. So I had to apply enough heat to bend what he did. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. So
I mean, every time I applied pressure, you just worked more hours.
Yeah, is this?
And
Yeah,
not less.
right. I tried harder doing things that weren't working.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let me continue though, Brad. Like, so we had to like sit down and going like, here's the next 90 days. All right.
Yep.
Like at the end of this 90 days, you're not here. And know that I'm completely connected with you. I'm going to give you everything that you ever want from me. You know, we'll meet as often as you want. I will give you feedback as much as you want. I will go on as many appointments as you want. I'm in. Like, we're together, right? I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not willing to do with you.
Yep.
But if you think you're going to keep doing what you're doing and get like equal success, like you're not going to be here. So here's how this works. First 30 days, like, you know, we're going to do this. The second 30 days, we're going to meet every morning and every evening in my office before hours and after hours to discuss what did you do? What did you do yesterday? What we're going to do tomorrow? Like that kind of stuff. The last 30 days, you're searching for a new job. And like, I don't need to be part of that. And so we laid that out. And so here's kind of how it happened, though, is I got a call from several of the other reps on the team going, wow, I heard from him, and like, wow, he's really broke down, right? And that feels bad, right? Let's be honest. Like, it sucks doing that to a human being, right? Like, I crushed their spirit at some point. Yeah. And I remember he came into my office, you know, within a day or two and said, you know, I called this person, I asked all this, and here's what I think is going to work for me to change. And it was different, right? Like, I wasn't sure it was going to work, but it was different than what we were doing. And it was the beginning of change, which ultimately I think is what we're talking about, right? Like, everybody's capable of the job, just whether they want to or not. Right. And so, well, maybe not everybody. That's probably a big,
yeah.
There is a get it, want it, can do it capacity, right? It's like, do they get the job first of all, and do they want it, and then can they do it, right? And there's definitely not all of those necessarily exist. I do think that, you know, it's where the word that we, you know, that is oftentimes used, or the phrase that's oftentimes used when we talk about this, is like, you got to hold someone accountable. Well, it's a little bit of a misnomer, and I don't really like that phrase, is because you can't hold anyone accountable to. Well, only person you can hold accountable is yourself, right? Like, so really, it's not about you holding them accountable. It's about them holding themselves accountable for the things that they said that they were going to do and that they need to be doing. And I think sometimes that's a mind shift change, that if they don't have that mind shift, understand that that's them driving it and they need to be responsible for it, and they need to do it themselves and self-motivate. And I'm not going to be prodding you. You know, if I'm prodding you, that means that you're on the way out. And that, so I think it's important sometimes, even just philosophical, conceptual understandings, like, no, this is not me holding you accountable. This is you holding you accountable. I'm going to coach you, but you need to do the work.
Yeah, right. I think it's, I'm thinking back to big picture, because I think it'd be useful. I wish somebody would have told me this. There's like 3 scenarios that I see where these, like, having to manage somebody out come up. One is new hire, and you see a difference between interview person and person that shows up for work, and what you thought was going to be there isn't necessarily there, and like they're not coachable, and like, so it's sort of an immediate, all right, we gotta work through, are you going to stick or not, and that's the approach. The second one is they get hired, they've shown an aptitude for doing the job, but after a while, either through like lack of their growth or company growth, there gets to be an angst where they think they were going to earn more money. They thought there was going to be more opportunity. So they work well for a year or two, and then eventually something plateaus, and they're like, it's just, I got to do something different. The third one is you grow as a company and you jump curves, and all of a sudden the expectations and the approach of what you're doing becomes more professional. The expectations get kind of upped a bit, right? Like, especially on sales, and you know, being a part of an enterprise now, I watch it. It's like every year you have to do more with the same resources, which means, kind of every rep needs to up their, like what you did last year for me is going to start over. And not only is it going to start over, but I'm going to expect more out of you this year than I got out of you last year. There's, that whole reality. Like those are the three big, in my mind, kind of categories when these scenarios tend to pop up. Does that resonate with you guys?
I'm going to put one adjacent to your number 3, and that's comfort. Like they got comfortable, right? Like they performed like it was okay. And yeah, like the company, but like, as we onboard new people, like we start down here and then and somewhere in this range they went, that's about comfortable.
Yeah.
And I would say there's another one, Steve, that comfortable. It's similar to this, but slightly different. Is that I know that we had to do this as we were growing. Is that we had people on our team where the role was defined as X, and then as we grew, we realized that the role expectations needed to be changed a little bit, and then the people that thought they were doing really well at X weren't necessarily the right fit for Y or Z. And so, I mean, and sometimes that's an unfortunate consequence of growth, and some people end up being able to adapt to that and some don't.
Yeah. Well, and we're in a technology business, so the things are changing hourly, right? Yeah. And I have expectations my team stay up with it. And it's not that I'm going to spoon feed it to them to learn whatever the latest thing and the greatest thing that's coming out. Like I expect them to be, at some level, just consuming at all times what's going on in the industry. Obviously, here, a couple of weeks ago, we had this whole, virus detection problem that, I probably better not say their name because I'll probably get sued or something. But we all know what I'm talking about. And it's like, I expect them to know because customers can be asking about it. Right. And so if we're going to be looked at the experts, I expect them to know how to talk about what's going on in cyber, what's going on in tech, what's going on. Not that they have to know everything about it. It's impossible, but in general, they should be gaining skill set.
Yeah.
So Brad, if I go to number 1, the first thing that you mentioned, and by the way, what you just said, Steve, is that's also holding themselves accountable. Like if you're choosing to be in this industry, whether technical or sales, you're also choosing to not do just the minimum in life because the world constantly changes and you got to keep up with it. Otherwise, you're gonna get passed up. But go to number 1. I think I think this is one of the biggest mistakes. Well, the hardest part about the first one, which is like you're onboarding someone and they haven't yet gotten to the point of generating revenue and hitting quota, like kind of Steve was saying earlier too, is that having a detailed onboarding plan and milestones and steps and objectives that they should be achieving. And so this is, and part of this is when you're just starting out and you're just hiring your first person. That's part of the reason why we do this stuff, right? By the way, if you're just hiring your first account manager, like take the stuff that's in the kit and like start there, like modify it for your own. But like this is a lot of years of learning and pain because the first time I hired an account manager, that was not the case. But it's really important in the first 30, 60, 90 days to define kind of those milestones, and then and it gives you a very strong indicator of whether or not how fast do they achieve those milestones. Are they being proactive about achieving the milestones? Are they asking you questions if they're running into obstacles? Like you can start sensing how they're going to act. If they're being silent and if they're not doing those things, it's a really bad sign. And one of my sales managers just mentioned to me the other day, because we had a couple of people that we did have to manage out earlier this year and late last year. And then we just hired a couple new people, and she's like, night and day difference. Like I know what good looks like. Now I understand what it feels like to have someone on the team that's self-driven, that's going after, that's a go-getter, that's hungry, that's like looking and trying to find more versus someone that's like needs to be nudged and pushed. So part of that step 1 and even step 2 and 3 is having confidence in the way you're able to appraise the person and how they're doing, having confidence that those milestones are realistic and attainable, you know what I mean? All those kind of things and what that feels like. So, but ultimately that's the answer, right? That's the first start of it, is like setting objectives and milestones, and everything's a test. How are they doing on those things, especially in the beginning?
Nate, I was thinking here about a couple things you were saying, like you're talking about having some difficult conversations. This is the job, that kind of thing. And a lot of people can't take that, right? Like they literally cannot take the conversation. And then what I was thinking though is, as a salesperson, what do you think customers are going to do? Right? Like they're going to say the price is too high. You got to, like, how are you gonna, like, if you can't handle them pushing back,
criticism, feedback, yeah,
right? Let me just cut the price now, like, or when it gets to negotiation time, or when it gets to I need you to do the thing outside of standard, or like all that stuff. So I was putting all that together in my mind, going like, if they can't handle that early in the sales relationship of growing, they're not going to handle customers any better, right? So anyway, just a thought that I had kind of off the side. So
we got like 7 or 8 minutes left. I wanna make sure we get to the flow of managing out, and then some tactics, like some clear do this. So the flow, is it warning shot across the bow so they know they're in trouble or not performing, and then a performance improvement plan? Like, how do you go from you recognize an issue to a formal process? What does that look like for you guys?
So do you want to go? I mean, I'm happy to go. So I think, first of all, it's important to be clear about what underperformance means. And I'll give you an example of that, especially if you have multiple managers that might be managing different teams. Even if you have one manager managing a team or a person, what does underperformance look like? And so for us, I'll give you an example. For us, where a rep is going to be put on a performance plan is that if they're less than 75% of goal, that's just where our sales managers, I collaborated with them, and we just agreed, like, the goal is here, it's reasonable and attainable. It's not like a pie in the sky, some reps hit it. This is like, historically, we have lots of data to show that this is a reasonable and attainable target if you're doing your job, if you're just doing the things we expect you to do. And so if you're doing 75% of that or less, that's a trigger to put you on a performance plan. If you do that 2 quarters in a row, effectively, that's not the goodbye part. But I think so. My point, though, is that the KPIs, and sometimes those KPIs could be behavioral things. Are they not having their quarterly reviews with their clients? Are they not following up timely with things? Are there tickets on their service sales board expanding and no movement on them? Is the pipeline, do they keep kicking the can down the road? So all of, including whether or not they hit their numbers, but like all of the above are just indicators, right? Because it's, if a rep is hitting their numbers, it doesn't mean they can't be coached on some of the behaviors, because they could always improve. But if a rep's hitting their numbers, then you're working on those things to get them to the next level. If a rep's not hitting their numbers, then you're trying to figure out, okay, well, are you not hitting your numbers? Now let's look at the behaviors. Are you at least doing the key behaviors? If you're actually doing the key behaviors and you're not hitting the results, then it's how you're doing the behaviors. So it's really kind of starting with the KPIs as far as, are they hitting their goals? Then are they doing the key behaviors that we know result in hitting those goals? And if they are doing those things, then we look at, and they're not hitting their goals, then it's, well, you must be doing something weird or awkward, or maybe there's something not working in the way you're doing them, or maybe you're gaming the system and you're not actually doing the things you say you're doing. So that's kind of the tiered approach that we look at it, is like starting with goals and indicators, then the behaviors, and then how they're doing the behaviors, depending on how deep we have to go.
Yeah. Okay. So they're on something where they need to get better, right? Steve, you alluded to yours a little bit. It sounded like your sort of 90-day plan was we'll coach you 30 days, support you as much as we can. Next 30 days is a little different kind of level of coaching. And if we're not anywhere in 60 days, then basically we're doing a 30-day offboard to give you a soft landing, because the writing's on the wall and this probably isn't going to work out, right? Like that's that's the way you break it. Nate, what is it? What is that actual, like, when do they find out they're not, when do they find out they're on their way out the door? Is it the day they're gone? Like, how does that work for you?
Well, so I think, and this is all under the context of performance based or lack of performance versus some other type of personality or social behavioral thing, right? Because we probably had team members that there was other social things happening that was affecting their performance, but sometimes you end up cutting that quicker because it's something that they've gone over a threshold that you got to call it, right? So we're not talking about that.
Not anomalies, right?
Right. We're talking about performance and performance. The way that we do it, we have a quarterly review process. So for our team, just like we do for our clients, right? We actually have those goals are set as far as like key goals that each role has. For account management, it's 20% professional services pull through, gross margin on getting a certain percentage gross margin on one-time product sales, and then did they hit their quarterly reviews? That's basically it, right? Did they do those things? And if they didn't do those things, and again, if they're just under those things, that's okay. Right? Because I understand that quarters ebb and flow sometimes, but if they're under 75% of that, then it goes into basically, I'd say a very similar plan to what Steve said, as far as in the next quarter, we got to get you in a better place. And it will involve, and I think even if someone is underperforming, I think one of the sales manager's jobs, and I wasn't very good at this because as an owner being a sales manager, I was getting pulled in a lot of different directions. If you have a dedicated sales manager who that's their job, they should be doing ride-alongs with the team regularly anyway, but it's just going to increase, and the scrutiny is going to be a little bit different of those ride-alongs, especially if a performance plan's in place.
Yeah. Have you guys ever had to manage somebody out who's hitting their numbers, but like they get, I don't know, for lack of a better word, sort of cocky, and they're like, look, I can hit my numbers and not do some of the basic blocking and tackling because I can hit my numbers?
Not yet.
Yeah, I don't know that I have either. I will say this, back to what Nate just said about like the quarterly and how he runs his quarterly with his internal team, by the way, that's what I'm talking about here. Like our vernacular is different, but it's literally the same thing inside of Next Day.
Yeah.
Like the same metrics, the same style and everything. Probably the two things that I didn't hear inside of it that are really the same is, look, if you've been here for 10 years and you've hit your quota for, every quarter in the previous 9 quarters, and you had a couple quarters off. I'm not an idiot. Okay?
There's a little grace there
Like,
for sure.
Right.
We're going to start talking about some of those blocking and tackling things that you talked about, Brad. Like, make sure that they're executing on the things they had, but maybe there's some home things. I don't know. Like, there's some grace that you earn over time for sure. The second thing is, in that 90 days, the one thing that I do consistently talk to them about is they'll be like, well, I got this elephant that we're going to kill in 6 months and we're going to be good. And I'm like, well, that's cool because you're not going to be here in 6 months. So,
right.
Like, I appreciate that it's out there and, that's very hopeful and everything, but understand what we're going to talk about in this meeting is something that's going to happen in the next 90 days because everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we're out of time. So I'm going to remind everybody a couple things. One, smash the subscribe button. Smash it. You cannot hit the subscribe button hard enough. And two things. We are close enough that I believe we're looking at putting a shirt on. What's the name of the shirt again? What are we doing? The
get along shirt. Get along shirt.
Yeah. Next week in Denver, which reminds me that this whole thing is that we're bringing the show on the road. Not all three of us together, but we're bringing the show on the road. We have Nate and I heading to down under to Australia, and we're gonna we'll be down there, and you can pick Nate's brain on a lot of these topics in the third week of August in Sydney at the conference there. And then about a month later, Steve and I are going over for the Evolve meeting in Dublin, Ireland. Isn't that where we're going, Steve? I think.
Yep.
And you can do likewise there. So smash the subscribe button. Go to those events if you're in those geographies, or catch us at the Evolve meeting in Denver next week. And would love to hear what you're thinking about what we're doing and what we can add to the mix. So we got a minute left. Any parting thoughts? Nate, I'll come to you, and then Steve, you can wrap us up.
Yeah, I would just say that, Brad, one of the things you mentioned during this was that there is a reality where you've got folks will sometimes over time hit their aptitude level, right? They're not going to be able to go beyond it. And I think where that's okay. And in fact, I think and the way we look at that for an example is that like, the larger accounts that we have require a higher level of business acumen, technical acumen, sales acumen, and sometimes reps just don't have that capacity. And so they can only work with your smaller accounts.
Yeah.
But what that also means is it's going to limit their income earning potential. And so I think that is one of the hardest, we didn't talk about it much, but you kind of alluded to it, one of the 3 things that you mentioned, Brad. We didn't really talk about that much, but that's one of the hardest things to do because the reps limited in their capacity, and then so that means they're going to be limited in their income, and that's going to be that might be another reason why you have to manage somebody out, not because you want to manage them out, but because they want more than what the role can justify from a compensation perspective. And I know that is an issue that we've struggled with on a couple occasions. So yeah, I know that was I probably took more than my minute there, but I think that's another thing to be aware of, and just be conscious is that there is definitely, as you're growing team members, be careful putting them in a position when they're maybe not ready for it yet, and then backfilling that position, because now you might put yourself in a hard spot. So just be really careful about how you're elevating folks, and let them dip their toes in the water before they dive in, because that can avoid that situation.
Did we miss anything, Steve? What do you got for us? Wrap us up.
Brad and I stopped shaving at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say, Steve, like I got some new ring lights, and I'll have to say I am extremely well lit in this. Which means when I look at you, Nate, you're kind of right in the middle. But Steve,
Brad?
you look like they could be taking a mug shot of you, like you're in a dark alley. You got like a forward shadow going on, and we need you to up your game with some kind of a ring light or something.
I have one. It's on. Like it's
I think it's because Steve is closer in evolution to the Cro-Magnon, so he's just got that furrowed brow that gives more shadows. I just think that's what it is. I don't know.
Maybe it's called dark hair.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
It absorbs light.
All right. We're digressing now. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time.
Take care, everybody.